on this concept and transform their processes. Well, following up on this activity, the Human Resources Committee organized this webinar to follow up on this activity and share with those that were not able to participate back then on the benefits of this concept and some of the benefits applied to the Montevideo Airport and San Jose, Costa Rica airports. We go on to the next slide. As you all know, this webinar, like all other webinars organized by ASILAC, have simultaneous interpretation. For this, you should enable it in the Zoom menu, clicking on the globe icon and choosing the channel of your preferences, be it English or Spanish. And also at the end of the presentations, we will have 10 minutes for Q&A, questions and answers. And this occasion will be done through the chat. It's not enabled at this point in time, but when we start the meeting, we start the session for questions and answers at the end of the presentations. You can ask your questions through the chat. Without any further ado, as in previous occasions, we will be sharing this presentation and also the recording of the webinar later on today. And without any further ado, we want to thank Jose and the rest of the panelists, and they have the floor. Thank you very much, Francisco, and thanks to everyone that is in attendance or present in this webinar. Before starting, I wanted to take advantage of this slide on the screen where we have this strange word that we were playing with until we find the right word. Some of you possibly received some communications about Agileports, which is a combination of airports and agility. What we will discuss today is how we combine these two concepts for business purposes. Everything we discuss today has the purpose to insert agility in the business of the airports and in the specific problems of the airports. Even though today's presentation will be very brief, we will try to compress. This is why we apologize if we go a little bit fast, and because of the amount of information we will provide in a very short time. And please keep in mind, at the end of the conversation, we will leave some time for Q&A, questions and answers. You can ask whatever you need. Here I will introduce myself, and I invite you to write down my email. You can see it down here, down below. Please ask any questions, any pending questions that will not be answered during today's presentations. We will be totally available for you. I'm Jose Saha. I'm in charge of operations. I'm director of operations of Readiness Global, a consultant company whose purpose is to accompany transformations in organizations. The design of our consultancy firm is totally oriented so we can count with all the necessary tools so we can accelerate and ensure transformations in organizations. We will see that it's a very, very current topic or issue. Many of you are living it possibly. And in this case, we will see it involves agility, because agility will be presented as a solution to many of the problems that we are having. We wanted to interact a little bit with you. So the idea for the next slide is that we will give the floor to Cecilia. Excuse me. Before we do this, I want to give you a brief summary of today's agenda. We will start a little bit by revising what is the context that we are immersed in, what is the market and the market phenomena that we currently have. And especially this year, we have started to see clear acceleration and change processes. Our issue or topic today is how agility will provide solutions, a point of departure, so we can quickly adopt and adapt our organizations continuously, because this is a word that we cannot prevent anymore with these change processes that will accelerate, not only in the airports, but globally speaking. So we will see what agility is with this purpose, what benefits agility presents. If you try to implement this in your business, we will see in a macro manner how it's being implemented, but specifically for the airport business. We don't want to, we have to mention the importance of the methodologies or how change management is done in any organization. We combine agility with change management. So we will talk about the different strategies, how we implement agility, specifically in airports. And for this, finally, we will present two cases. The idea is that the protagonists present these cases, those that are working on these changes in Uruguay airports and Aeris in Costa Rica in this case. They will present their cases. We have Fernando Sansone, Nicolas Karp, and Jason Araya. They will present their cases at the end. So we have concrete, specific cases so you can see the application of what I will be presenting to you previously. Now we invite you to interact. The idea is to count with your information so we can orient my conversation towards your needs that you might have. Cecilia, good morning to everyone. I'm Cecilia Farinha. I'm part of the readiness team in the learning area. And well, as you can see on the screen, well, our travel has a check-in. Our check-in starts by proposing to you that please you scan with your cell phones the QR code you see on the screens. I will leave it there on the screen so you can see the QR code, and I will redirect you to a platform. Maybe some of you have already explored this platform, Mentimeter platform, that will allow us to interact. Why? Because when you go into this platform, you will find the phrase that we see on the screen now. Apply agility at the airport would help us to 3 points. To what? This is what we ask from you, that you please complete from your own experience, your current situation, from your own needs, what you consider how agility would help in each one of your organizations. This is what we will invite you, that please scan the QR code and complete the information. We will upload the results very briefly. If anyone has any difficulty to scan, please go to our website and you can complete with the code you see on the screen, 80680999 code. Please use this code if you have difficulties, 6809999. Well, we want to read your inputs to know a little bit about how you are doing in your organizations. Well, we will soon be able to see what you have in your organizations currently. Well, it looks very interesting. Well, you still have time to continue responding, please. So take your time. The question is, for what it would be useful to apply agility in our airports? If you want, we can start reading some of the things we're receiving from our participants. I will read, for instance, to be more efficient, to reduce costs, lower costs. A part is the concern we're having in the organizations because of the current context with competitiveness, uncertainness, but to provide services with more efficiency. Maybe we can combine this with improving the customer experience to provide value to our customers, be different from other airports, to provide better services. All of this is along the same line, and it's totally aligned with agility, perfect, optimize our processes or airports, I think. Well, sometimes we have a glitch here, but we will go back to that screen so we can see the answers. 1 second, please. We cannot see it, but if you want to read them, Ceci, yes, I will read them. Well, this happens sometimes. Here we can see them. To optimize processes and facilitate change, adaptation to change, be able to complete projects more efficiently and quickly. Well, I will use this time, I will use the last concept to be able to implement projects more quickly and with more efficiency. Indicators, well, we've been using methodologies for implementing projects, traditional projects on waterfall or cascade manner. We used to have a flaws of around 29%. 29% of waterfall projects used to fail. We call them we say they fail when they did not reach proper quality for their products, or it was not done with the necessary funds or resources. This is what we call that they failed. The degree of failures now is around 8% with agility projects. We will look into this and why. What's interesting about agility, more than acceleration of projects, is what we will call delivering early values. Here we will look at results of the projects. We will see why this is happening. Well, I'm reading Liberate Stress, Increase Sales. These are different issues. Liberate stress might depend on the organizational climate, health, the human resource aspects. It involves the human side of organizations, and I confirm agility is also demonstrating, for instance, in some research investigations we've done of great places to work with the better assessed, evaluated companies, with customer satisfaction, we see that almost in 100% of these organizations, there's some type of advances with agility, with a degree of 92% approximately in reference to mindset of agility mindset in these best work or best place to work companies. I would not like to talk about the different generations, but this is happening especially with the newer or latter generations. It's more attractive for newer generations, actually. To give you a brief overview, we see many of the answers are being repeated, improving processes, including passenger experience to increase satisfaction, reduce stress. And another point I see that is repeated a lot is to be able to identify change needs. So in general, we could encompass, in my idea, the responses we have obtained in 3 basic areas or topics. In a nutshell, or summarizing, I think we are on the same page. We're all talking about the same topics or issues. It's all aligned with agility. So what we'll do is talk about these points during our presentation so they make more sense so each one of you can think what our presentation can be useful, in what senses it can be useful for you. I would like to talk about a survey from McKinsey about general management aspects. Here I will read some of the points where general managers are more focused on. of course, what we call digital disruption with artificial intelligence this year, even though this has been coming now for many years. This year, it's had a quantic leap with the ChatGPT appearance, and there are several tools that have been availed uh, after this, and they're being implemented quickly in some companies. In this sense, I want to mention a story how we reached our current context. We have a very mechanized theory. Well, we started in 1780, let's say, very mechanized theory where vapor energy started to give us a more orderly, structured, linear view of processes in the companies. This at the end generated uh, mass production, industry 2.0, mass production, assembly lines with the appearance of electricity, uh, and later on, automatization of these processes, even the appearance of the first robots or machines that looked like robots. We're talking about 1970 onwards. Obviously, these robots evolved a lot after the 70s. And last, what we call knowledge industry. Now we are on a breaking point or equilibrium point where we go into a next phase, actually. What we can say about this current time is that digitalization and technology is leading the change process at a rate or celerity. The we human beings that manage companies are having inconveniences to continue that change rhythm. So somehow we have started to develop some management technologies or new organizational forms or templates that will allow us, that would allow us potentially to be more willing, more ready, better prepared for this change. But here the point is, are we in conflict with technology as we see on the drawing on the screen? Do we need to fight against or with technology, or we, as we see in the next slide, or is it about finding a friendly way of looking for an internal acceptance way that this is what's happening out there, and to find organizational ways or forms that will allow us to be friendly with digitalization processes. Going on to the next slide, I even want to challenge all of you a little bit more. What we see on the screen was almost a joke a few years ago. We imagined these mixed teams of robots and people. Now they start to be a reality in the organizations. We're not talking about automatizations, about automatic robotization processes where we automatize part of the processes. But no, we're talking about conversations with what we will call artificial intelligence, conversations with other members of the team, the automatized processes, and we persons will start to live with this. This includes all organizational levels. Well, we must consider that the data we accrue in our databases are wealth, pure wealth, actually, for these new systems, given the capacity that our hardware has to process them and provide very quick online information for decision making or to adapt our products so they can get quicker to the market. So we're talking about a concept. This is the model that better describes the context, VUCA or VICA context, or we talk about volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Even though this has been around for many years, we're talking about a concept that appeared in 2001 with the U.S. Armed Forces. They used this concept. It's very current. We're talking about abrupt changes. We're talking about little visibility for the future, time frames have been reduced. We used to say long-term 10 years. Now we say long-term 5 years. Many times in some companies, we say long-term 2 years. And management in the different companies is a very short term where we only have visibility of some variables. And many times they're ambiguous. We have reliable, contradictory, reliable information. We have sometimes contradictory information. And agility somehow comes to give us a response to this context. This is a little bit, so we keep this in mind. I like to use this slide. I promise I will not go over one of these years, but this is a more personal point of view, and I think it's readiness focus, how we see agility. Agility is not a new concept. Even though in 2001, the Agile Manifest gave us an answer to the need to have projects that would have a different format or a different way to be faced, especially with the software industry, delivering, providing software. They started to have problems, flaws, celerity, speed problems, reaction problems, speed problems reacting to market changes, especially. So we have this Agile Manifest. So we took this concept, agility, for different concepts that will allow us to have much sensitivity, looking at market changes, and especially now we will talk about customers, because somehow with new technologies, we will be able to individualize or place them in clusters, all of these customers to work for each one of them. So agility is allowing us to look at the film, the movie, let's say, the desires, wishes of the customers, and quickly, so an organization can quickly adapt their processes, structures, the different organizational dimensions, so they can provide deliverables quickly. They can provide quick deliverables that satisfy customers quickly, and they can choose us or our companies. They choose us, so it generates a perception of value of our services that will allow us to have a proper price for this service. So, or so we can compete in a very competitive market. So in a nutshell, there are several tools. We're talking about, for instance, about the Deming cycle, Kaizen, Six Sigma, Kanban, different concepts that started rising after the 90s. We wanted to show you the whole vision here. Agility somehow takes all of these tools I mentioned that will allow us to have a more agile view, but especially beyond instruments, frameworks, tools. In the methodology, agility, we will call frameworks to all of these aspects. But it's especially about organizational capacity, a mindset, an organizational culture that should be ready or must be ready to have this sensitivity and be able to respond to the market. We'll talk about adaptation. For this slide on the screen will show us the first we have culture. I would like to stop a little here and emphasize this. If we don't work in our mindset, our culture, our values, I would like to add the concept of purpose, vision, mission. And I'm not talking about official statements for these concepts. No, I'm talking about the belief that about the concepts of the organization and how the organizations want to do things. The other things we do in the organization, I assure you, I've been doing this for several years, will not work. It's important that we start with the mindset, the culture. What we want to say here is that changes required by our organizations are deep when we compare them with our traditional organizations. You will have to assess or evaluate the current status of your company. Normally, that is the work we do. when we go for the first time to an organization, we look at the status, we look at their organizational cultural aspects. And after this point, we look at the challenges and culture, not only of methodologies and frameworks. We need to have the customer right in the center. Here we have some of the principles of agility. We need to change quickly. Well, this implies that we have a project that has advanced towards a specific direction or objective. And with the changes and requirements of the customers or market, we very quickly must redirect the project so that people are prepared to change and learn all new aspects and redirect their objectives and purposes very quickly without losing any time, without this implying huge structural changes or mobility. We try to shorten delivery timeframes. Some of you mentioned celerity or the quickness of the projects. Celerity or speed and agility involves changing direction very quickly. Something very interesting that agility will provide. We will look at a method later on. It will allow us to quickly show or demonstrate value to our customers internally in our organizations and externally when it's about customers that want to receive a service from us, actually. These deliveries, early deliveries, will allow us to receive quickly feedback from the customers to understand their points of view. For this, we need to have the capacity to listen, to hear them, to see what their opinions about the products, and then reprocess this information and retransform this product continuously, generating continuous improvement of our services or even innovating, because many times agility allows us to develop not only new ways of providing our services, but also new services that we had not contemplated, or as some of you have mentioned, efficiency, to redesign our internal processes, because we don't only generate products, but also processes and tools, automatizations of the processes, better ways of providing services to the customers, even educating our customers. We'll talk more about this. I also chose among the principles autonomy concept because autonomy has two parts. It has a leadership part. The style of leadership generates autonomous or dependent people. So there's a style of agility. And on the other hand, the employees, the staff, they must be willing somehow to receive this responsibility in their hands and make decisions. For this, they must count with a safe context where they can make decisions. And I will talk to you about a concept we have always discussed in the companies: to make mistakes. Make mistakes in agility is a learning aspect or mechanic. Organizational aspects must allow for errors, and that errors are not hidden, but taken advantage of for continuous improvement. Clearly, I have lived this personally. It's very difficult to translate responsibilities to the employees so they can make decisions by themselves when we think that the best decisions will be made by us as leaders of the companies. Here, mindset leadership is very important. So later on, we will look at the importance of starting the strategy to implement agility. We will call it top-down strategy. Last, on this slide, I want to talk about the continuous feedback. Continuous feedback involves a proactive behavior of the company. Even in some companies, we have specific areas in the companies dedicated to listen to the customers. And it also involves an internal culture or mindset where I ask for continuous feedback from others. I'm not talking about only informal conversations within the organizations. I'm talking about mechanic aspects or aspects that are involved or are part of the processes. They must be part of these dynamic aspects. Now, on the next slide, frameworks for agility, we have many. Some are better known than others. On the screen, I'm placing some of the best known, and these will give us an idea of what changes implementation of frameworks involved. Taking into account, we don't start right here, but this must be done simultaneously with cultural changes in the organization so it works. But we will soon things are on the way. Let's say we can have post-its stuck all over the place. We will we will meet standing up on our organizations. We will see how things are changing, but we will not see real changes or business impact. Not yet, anyway. Let us talk about some of these methodologies. Let us start with the one with the largest text here, which is Scrum. Scrum, even though it has lots of applications with systems development, software developments in the organizations, the Scrum also involves concepts that are applicable to other areas. The first concept that I think is interesting to emphasize is the sprint concept that basically is a cycle for construction of a product. This product will have the characteristics of an MVP technology, or it's a viable product. We're not looking for the final perfect product, something that can be tested, something that can be availed to the customers so the customers can live with it and give us quick feedback so we can produce a next sprint. This sprint sequences or delivery cycles, what they will allow us is with a series of sprints to provide a product or a service of the expected quality by the customer and the measure of the customer. I think this is one of the most interesting concepts, and Scrum has many others. Scrum also gives us a way of day-to-day life, internal work in our organizations through what we call events, or what we used to call ceremonies, where these events or ceremonies will generate internal conversations with specific formats or planning or follow-up style or meetings with customers so we can relay information very quickly. The Scrum is much more than this, of course. We can talk about Scrum concept for hours, but I think it's interesting to mention this. What is the Scrum framework? It involves these aspects: interaction, early value delivery, listening to the customers in each cycle with the sprints of the project. Another interesting concept and very well known is the lean concept. Lean concept. Many times we provide a service to the customer and the customer sees it as a process that requires to be improved on or to be more efficient. What we do is we use a lean methodology. This lean methodology involves something of what we see in Scrum, a series of work dynamics, conversation ways and the processes where the team that is part of the process will get involved in a continuous cycle of continuous improvement, not only with external people that tell me this is the best practice for your process, but no, we will generate a cycle, a way of working in the organization. We will even transfer knowledge and a mindset to this team so they can do it continuously without depending on a third party. So it's a culture. Lean is a culture. It's a way of living my process and improving on it continuously, always looking at the customer's needs. I will go into design thinking now. Design thinking, what's interesting about it is empathy with customers. Before developing any service, there are a series of methodologies or work dynamics that will help us to understand clearly from the customer's point of view what are their satisfaction needs. All design for services come out of this service design concept. You will see that one of the two cases we will present later on is leverage on this design thinking concept. It gives us a special, specific way to listen to the customers. And so we can design services tailored to the needs of the customers. This methodology implies a challenge on the way on how habitually we normally listen to customers. Let me use a very broad-ranging word here. How we interpret the customer's needs, not only from our own point of view, but from the way the customers think. So all tools that we use to have empathy with the customers involve all of this. Last, the concept of just in time. But today, we have a way of following up with projects. It's all systematized. We have different tools, so we can follow up on tools in a lighter way. It involves different infrastructure. Now we go on to the next slide. I have little time, excuse me for going so quickly. This slide is basically a summary of the implementation focus for any change in an organization, what a cultural change implies. It's a top-down view. To say it simply, if the direction of the company does not change, the directors don't change, if they don't understand, they don't comprehend the change vision, in this case, agility, not agility as I'm presenting it to you, but agility for you. When I say for you, it's not only for airports, it's for any specific company where we work. The first step is to have reflective, deep work on the different organizational dimensions with this change vision. We need to imagine that the organization is already agile. What is agility? What does it mean for us? That we take into account the business environment or business scenarios that you have in mind. What we expect from our airport, what do we expect from our airport during this time frame? We will look at the case of the Aeropuertos of Uruguay. And here we should define what agility means for us. It's not the standard agility, but I need to understand clearly what agility means for me. It seems simple, but it requires many different conversations, many times workshops where we define clearly. Somehow, this is like storytelling about our vision. It has a soft and a hard side. We will talk about processes, organizational structures, what are the skills required and the different organizational levels, what are the business objectives we need to have with the methodology. You have the soft and the hard sides. How we will the tests we will have for the indicators from top down. We will develop the change in mindset, and we will go from top down. Simultaneously, on the right, you see some feedback work. We will also work down from down to up. What are the organizational areas where I can apply agility, for instance? What is the proper framework for this area? And to say quickly, it's an area based on processes that is improving its processes, is possibly working with lean, and we need to work with organizational mindset and culture based on lean. So we can develop systems. Will work when we work with systems. We work with Scrum that has more internal system aspects. Okay, the message of this slide, let's not forget about people. There's no possible change in our organization if we don't take into account humans, the human side of change processes. So my invitation on this slide, if we want to go ahead with our projects, we need to leverage them with change methodology aspects. Here you see some change methodologies. I will give you some concepts. before this, and we will give you more details. First of all, we have the vision. In change management, if I don't know where I'm going, it's very difficult that will get there or I will change. This doesn't imply that this is only for the leaders or directors of an organization. We all must know where we want to go in my specific work areas. What is expected from me? Where must I go? The second question is, what would happen if we don't change? It must be clear for everyone. I told you at the beginning of my presentation about this context. This generates urgency. If we know about the urgency context, what would happen if we don't change? We must assume the responsibility for change. This must also be part of the change process. Establish a sensation, a feeling of urgency. All members of the organization must understand what it would mean not to change in a context that we just mentioned about continuous change. And last, I emphasize this concept about change agents. The organization always has some of the organization profiles, people that are more willing to change, change adopters, we call them. Sometimes we relate this with age, but I don't think it's about age. It's about the mindset to be able to face changes in an organization. This team must be detected by us. They will be our allies in applying change. And it's interesting to see change, and with this I close, it must be a contagious process. If we are able to generate a critical mass of people that is evidencing change, this will start to become a contagious process, so others will be encouraged to follow. So, well, we need to work in what I call like a brief reign or short reign of change. We need to start working with our agents, change agents initially. And last, to close, simply a phrase to summarize. You will count with these presentations on PDF. This is an example on how we set some change sprints or gradual change sprints in our organizations. I've already mentioned some of them. We start with a diagnosis and assessment. So later on, we can design all the change strategy tailored to each organization. And last, I want to tell you that the last phrase is in regard to capacity to center ourselves with the customers, capacity to adapt the organization to the business needs, and that the heart of agility is culture. If we don't have people don't have this in their heart, it will not work. Well, now I will give the floor to Fernando. Sorry for going so quickly. Thanks for your time. Now we go into later we go into Q&A, questions and answers. Thank you, Jose. As always, very clear in your concepts. Our idea is to share a little bit about the transformation process that we started one year ago, a bit more than a year ago. And as Jose was saying, first we have culture. This strategic redefinition that we had because of the pandemic, we also revised our strategic purpose, our values, and we also defined strategic pillars and how the organizational structure accompanies these definitions. We also define, well, what is the culture we desire, we want, how we can mold a desired culture. In this sense, we define 3 attributes we wanted in our culture: diversity, innovation, and also agility. At the beginning, I read through this presentation and the Mentimeter tool that the main concerns or the aspects that agility will resolve in our airport involves efficiency and improving customer experience. And as Jose well said, agility, or this management agile model, responds to these needs. what we want to share with you is a possible way of doing it. Well, I put the hat on of any participant and I start thinking, well, it's very good that we share or that we transform ourselves into an agile organization. But where do I start? So here with Nicolas, what we want to share with you, how in the case of Aeropuertos Uruguay and Carlos Sipi, we have been also working in our cargo terminal on this aspect. Well, we want to share how we process this transformation model. So Nicolas, who's our expert in agility, our agility leader in transformation, will share with you this path we are currently on. Thank you, Fernando. Well, good morning to everyone. Thank you for your presentation. A bit, as Fernando was mentioning, and Jose before me, when we started to work in agility, the first thing we had to do is ask ourselves what we understood. And we started this in our presentation this morning. The definition we found is that for us, agility is the capacity we have as individual persons or organizations to adapt, to reach adaptability in an uncertain context. And this with the objective so we can contribute the most value to our customers. Keeping clear on this premise, we defined a focus. And this focus, as Jose mentioned in his presentation, is top down and at the same time it's bottom up. We started to work with our C-level view, with our strategic vision at C-level, let's say. We started orchestrating our transformation roadmap too. And in parallel, we started also to work in experimentation with different teams with agility aspects using frameworks and work methodology to be able to go top down, bottom up, generating awareness. Now I want to show you, present some examples with agility that we're working on in our organization. This first example involves top-down approach in we have converted or turned our organization in a dual organization. What does this mean? Dual organizations allow us, on the one hand, to be able to use hierarchic standard practices for the daily operations model, and in parallel, to take advantage of benefits of a network or hierarchy to leverage innovation and business models in our organization. An associated example to this management model is, as Fernando was saying beforehand, building strategic pillars that at the same time have defined sponsors that are in charge of leading cross-company projects with methodology frameworks in such a manner to leverage this transformation strategy. Another example related with top-down approach involves our agile management model based on Kanban system or model. Kanban is one of the tools that agility counts with. This model is implemented in 100% of our management team, and this allows us, on the one hand, to standardize communication logic in our workflow throughout all our management teams. It's also providing us new organizational models, new distribution models, and this allows us to place metrics and other types of decisions. It also provides much value in autonomy growth with our teams and members. And of course, we are managing communications in a more efficient manner or way. A comment associated with this that even though we have deployed this in 100% of our teams, many other teams in our company are doing it too, also with operations groups or other groups. Now, going a little bit into our other focus with our roadmap I would like to share the experience we had with our first Agile Cell of Work. This references our flag project, which is our new international airport system. And in this case, this approach has allowed us to build work teams, multi-area work teams with different skills or abilities. And this allows us to push or thrust forward our objectives with all our stakeholders or with interconnected teams with methodology, with proper methodology. And this resolves or helps us to make decisions in a more agile or with a higher degree of preciseness. It also allows us to have more synergy with our teams. And a bit to close, we have little time left. I would like to mention our Agile Facilitators team. This is a bottom-up leverage aspect, and we are working on change agents, as mentioned by Jose. These change agents are collaborators throughout all our organization in different areas, and our objective is to be able to develop these change agents so that they can share practices, tools, so they can advise, detect, and collaborate with initiatives, collaborate with projects to accompany teams. These people currently accompany the change aspects in our Kanban organization. They're the main persons for deployment for culture and agile practices. I think with this, I close. What I want to share with you is that for our company, agility is the best continuous way forward. And these are the steps we should or must make so our company can go to higher levels. Thank you very much. I leave you with Jason Araya, who will tell us about Costa Rica's case. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nicolas and Fernando. Well, how in Costa Rica can we tell you about this agility concept? We have seen that service design has contributed as a tool so we are able to apply agility in our projects. In this case, we know that when we talk about agility, many times we talk about time frames. We also talk about acting now. Right now, there are future projects that will resolve situation, but we need to think on the present, how we are agile with what we currently have, how we migrate and we do a transition towards the future. So with all this support, taking notes and looking quickly at our exercise, Menti exercise, we extracted that when we talk about agility, we talk about facilitation of processes, reducing costs, improving experiences, improving services, and specifically, we have a case, even though it's a small case, it allows us to translate very quickly and easily how we, with service design, we look at agility in our processes and in our airport. And this airport, we are married with the concept of pure life experiences, something that characterizes Costa Ricans a lot. Costa Ricans, the pura vida, the pure life concept. How do we make it possible that the airport can provide to the passengers that are our reason for being, our motivation, based on applying practical creative tools? How we can generate value for our customers, because we must always have a focus towards processes and contributing to value so we can see exactly the agility concept applied at the end of all these aspects of pure life, pura vida. So when we talk about developing service design and methodology, we started to analyze the process. What passengers need or are taking when they are traveling or arriving in our airport. So we started brainstorming to determine what is happening, what our bottlenecks are, what bottleneck points are creating more impact with the passengers. So we identified that in arrivals area, international arrivals area, in customs, passengers want to go quickly and efficiently through that area. And it turns out here in Costa Rica, our current laws establish that 100% of checked baggage and hand baggage must be included in an X-ray machine through a screening process. So it's a process that adds more time, uh, and so when the passengers have their baggage or luggage, they want to leave quickly to see their family, leave the airport quickly. So this process generates more time, and the passengers are uncomfortable. It's also a process that in our current design with our X-rays machines, it this makes us see or determine that it's necessary to analyze what we can develop, understanding our main customers, our customers. So based on this methodology, we worked on having more empathy, evaluating that I'm playing around with words and I say EDIPE, which is service design for me. So applying service design methodology, we reach the following design. First, we have the empathy stage to observe, analyze what is happening. Based on this stage, we started to work on observations and measurements with a critical eye. Many times when we are in the airport, our eye is very vague. This is what we've always had. It's always been done. So we need to analyze, revise the process in an objective manner, understanding how long all activities take, all time frames they take. Additionally, to this perspective or point of view, we go to the customers and we start to understand for the passenger what this process means or contributes, and we obtain important results. 30% of all surveyed passengers tell us it's important to work initially with the X-rays machine. Why? Because X-rays machines are 37 inches high from the floor. So Costa Ricans like to buy things a lot. So to come from the United States with two big suitcases, full suitcases that they had to pay for over costs, and then they have to lift them 37 inches or centimeters. So it involves some efforts. And then you add to this children, elderly people, and people that must need collaboration or some assistance for somebody to lift this luggage up to the X-ray machine. So we started to work in the empathy area. We started to look at the different time frames, and we started to analyze what passengers were saying. Then we go to the definition stage. What do we do here? We define the opportunities that we can execute, and we could work on the different projects. So we define the more important focal point, which in this process was at the beginning with X-ray machines. We started brainstorming and we decided that we needed to work on a project. We went into the ideas part. So we look for options to look for facilities towards the passengers. So we determined we needed a sort of ramp so that the passengers will look in a simpler, easier way, so they can place their luggage, take it up to the X-ray machines, so they don't need to exercise much strength when they need to have their luggage through X-ray machines. So being clear what we look for, we designed a prototype In this case, we had two prototypes. This is why it's important to talk here about this stage, because it also allows us to look back, revise the situation, make adjustments, and not reach the end, and then at the end determine that what we did was not the ideal. So in this prototype stage, we worked on a first stage, a ramp. We started to understand the different situations, the passengers, people that we started to understand the inspectors that do the inspection timeframes, but we were still not 100% convinced. So we went to a second prototype of placing an automatic ramp. So we are trying to provide easier steps so passengers don't have to use any strength to place their luggage on the X-ray machines. It was installed. We installed prototype 1. We provided some time. It did not work. We looked back. We went to prototype 2. We did tests. There's an important point here from the point of view of the passenger, and another from the team's point of view perspective. Is a ramp fast enough? Is it not fast enough? Well, we evaluated and did adjustments. It's interesting too, because prototype 2, we had to look back again, go back again, look back again. We decided to change the motor of this ramp because it was not fast enough for all the luggage or baggage. So we had to change the motor, and we needed to evaluate again. So we had the prototype we needed to develop. We evaluated, and then we defined what were the points of view of the passengers, and we defined the timeframes. We obtained fairly positive results of 4.91 from 0 to 5 of customer satisfaction with this change. Here we see the benefits we obtained when we look for agility. With the service design methodology, we were able to improve customer experience and satisfaction. We reduced processing times, because when a automatic band was carrying baggage, we reduced 3-4 seconds per passenger in this activity. So if we have 1,500 passengers in 1 hour, we multiply 4 times 1,500, you can see how many seconds we improved our processes. And we used our resources much better. When we increased the speed of the process, we had more efficient resources. With the same inspectors and machines, we had much better performance. So I have a much better passenger satisfaction with luggage aspects, but with our timeframes. And something very important, in fact, was reducing costs and using prototypes before final execution of a project. Without the prototype, we would have bought 4 ramps. Maybe that's not what we had been looking for. At the end, we can say that execution of all these phases of service design methodology have allowed us to have a team that truly can comply, and we have finally the results, objectives we look for. And with the last slide, we can show you with photographs. As you can see here on your left, the X-ray machine that was 37 centimeters high. All luggage had to go there. What was our first prototype? Here you can see that luggage came back because the motor was not strong enough. So I had to push my luggage or baggage forward. So the objective was not well designed. And the image on your right, what you see is, well, the final product or design. If we see from prototype 1 to 2, there are many changes, and we can say with certainty that is the result we were looking for with the prototype 2. So with these images, we adjourn, we close our explanation of our case. It's very simple. We have other more complex cases, but this one is very simple. But here you can see our essence for basic design. So you can see that we are continually thinking about processes and customer service. Thank you. Cecilia? So now we go to a Q&A session. Just to let you know, Cecilia, if you allow me a moment to chat, it's enabled, so you can send your questions. We already have one, but in case anyone has any questions with the presentations, let us know. We have 10 more minutes for Q&A, questions and answers. Thank you. If you agree, meanwhile, we have a question from Jennifer, Guayaquil Airport. For Jason, she's asking about the execution stage of the project, the service design methodology. If you can explain what was the average time it took you with your service design process. Yes, of course. Jennifer, greetings, Jennifer. We have seen the project varies, and it depends on the type of execution we want to have. In this case, we had to build a ramp. So we had a time approximately of 2.5 months until we could test it. Thank you. Jennifer, you have any other question? Thank you, Jason. For the time being, we have no more questions. So, and everyone's pointing out it's been a really good presentation that has added a lot of value. We don't have any additional questions. Anyone has any comments, observations? Keep in mind that right at the beginning of the presentation, Jose shared his details, email and telephones and others. Anyone can ask a question or get in touch with Jose. It's been a really good webinar. Maybe Cecilia, maybe that same question could be answered by Nicolas and Fernando. We just have another question from Nelson. Nelson Rodriguez would like to know, what are the main difficulties to convince an organization to go to be part of this process, and what is the best way to overcome this aspect? Well, I can respond generically. Maybe airports can provide their own point of view. In a generic manner, generally, every change that implies, every change implies losses or pain. As some people say, they generate pain in the organizations. But in this case, the more traditional organizations that are more vertical, where decision flows are vertical, they normally lose some power in their organizations. So agility is more horizontal than vertical. So many times these processes, losing your comfort zone. So it's difficult for some companies to react sometimes. And a methodology for this is fears always involve the feeling of loss. And the feeling of loss is always a prejudice. You need to reflect within the organization. So you can talk about these fears about capacity to face change. And on the other hand, this involves more leadership. Leaders must be able to generate certain levels of certainty in the organization. For this, as we were saying, we need to understand clearly what agility means for us so we can transmit it, believing profoundly. This will be a methodology that will make our organization successful. This is key. And last, from the point of view of change management, the massive answers are not the best ones normally. We can talk about the organization's point of view, what is of benefit for the organization. Even I was telling you about the urgency sense. What happens if not everyone changes? Well, we have a systems too. All leaders must understand clearly what benefits will be presented by change processes. We always have them. To give you a concrete example, agility is implemented in almost 100% in all global organizations, partially or not. But we're talking about agility in most organizations. And if organization does not implement this process, they will lose sight of what is happening in the market. But this can be done individually too, to work on these reticence aspects. In our case, first, it's necessary to convince the organizations about the benefits. And we need to start with managers, directors, to somehow ensure this top-down flow. But our experience was very good. Inversely, our first invitation to be part of a facilitators team for agility, we summoned, I think it was 6 persons that were curious at that point in time. And well, it's been more than a year. Correct me. Now we have 35 to 40 facilitators dispersed in all hierarchies and levels of the company. And this fermentation process, this process to look and adopt, is contagious for other teams. So our recommendation has really worked really well. Doing this at the same time, addressing this at the same time. I could also support something very quickly here, and it's that we need to demonstrate, show results. Many organizations ask us during execution time that they want to execute to have results. This is very important. How do I convince my directors, my managers that something works out? And we need to go in this direction. We need to have very concrete results or information for this. Probably, yes. Well, very well. Thank you. A message here from Marco is that, well, we recognize the pura vida, the pure life experience. It is throughout the whole country. It's all Costa Rica that has this philosophy, pura vida, pure life, certainly. Jorge, what is recommended to apply the agility methodology to financial controls, quality controls, security controls, and other controls that need a long time because of their nature? The common factor for what I see here as processes, financial controls, we're talking about the word control. Controls must involve processes. We need to follow an orderly sequence in a process that involve internal controls in every process. Here, the lean methodology is the best one, the proper one, taking into account that for instance, in Jason's presentation, he somehow went through a process. He mentioned the processes step by step, and then how they were able to improve with these processes. So within agility, we need to revise these processes and we need to ensure that these controls are part of the sequence. More questions? How to manage, how to have strict controls of the different companies and to have a portfolio with a budget so we can adjust with possible costs and efforts. In fact, I think understanding, if we understand the origin of every project, this is the toolkit of tools we can use. If we have projects that depend on a budget, fixed terms, or specific items, I imagine this must be leveraged on a specific structure. It must have a logic to it. And if we later on find initiatives that, because of their nature, if we don't count with 100% of certainty, this would imply that we need to use an agile methodology framework. They're not exclusive one from the other. In fact, in our cargo terminal, we must live with both things. I think the secret, in quotes, is to identify clearly which one of these tools applies better for what we want to obtain and advance in this manner. But in my experience, we can do it properly if we have the clear difference, if we know the clear difference. Well, in the chat, Julissa, well, it was an interesting presentation. She would like to know how you can start up with this process. Well, in my case, I could tell you, much of it involves wanting to do things in a better way, because what we can always say, well, we will keep the same and so forth, but we will never advance. But what's important to always want to do things differently and to look for different tools, methodologies, how they can help us to achieve our objectives. Because as Nicolas was saying, there are different processes, there are different methodologies, but what's important is to look for, like with this project, we did not have a budget, but it's about looking for results to demonstrate impact that a project can have, to say, well, this is a project that could provide us with some actionable margins or some spread times or some timeframes to work with. But if at the end the companies will obtain the results or objectives they're looking for, they can look for more funds in their budget. Well, how did we start? In Costa Rica, we say, well, we started with our desire or wish to do things. Well, complementing Jason, that I share 100% with you. We also have to convince high management to start with. And if we agree that to have the customer right in the middle, to try to improve their experience, to work with autonomous teams, empowered teams, facilitating decision making. If we react more quickly, more efficiently with changes, or we anticipate it, if that's the way to do it, well, agility will answer these aspects. So agile model, or this change in mindset, responds properly to this new way of doing business. And if the direction or board of directors or managers of the companies are looking for this. Our role is to advise these general managers that this is a possible way forward, and it's a, a way or road that has provided good results everywhere we have applied this strategy or or this agility. What I can add, Fernando, is detecting proper initiatives within the organizations that are important for the companies. Just as Jason mentioned, it's uh, just specific proposals for specific aspects. So we must demonstrate how, with agility, we can demonstrate concrete results. Quick wins, what we call quick wins to these opportunities with little or efforts, we can have concrete or quick results. On the other hand, education. Many times when we listen to an unknown concept, we are afraid of it. So something we've been working with Fernando is training with the basic issues or aspects throughout the whole organization. When the organization starts to understand what this is, how useful it is in my area, then they start to understand better, and they will lose their fear once they understand what it's all about. Absolutely. Well, thank you. Very well. We don't have any more comments. And I know people, well, we're way beyond our time, initial time. Francisco? Yes. In case you have any additional questions that you were not able to send at this moment, you have our contact information. We will be sending the presentation to all of you and the recording of this webinar later on today. And if you have any questions, you can send your questions on the email we showed you initially. On my behalf, I want to thank you all for your time today, and to the presenters, thank you for sharing your experiences. Thank you very much, and have a good day. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. See you. Bye bye.